I'm Susan Blunt, one of the co-directors of Neighbors on Call, and you'll hear from Becca Zirkin, my co-director, in just a few minutes. Thank you for joining us tonight to hear from our state Democratic Party leaders about their plan to turn North Carolina blue and what they need from us to make it happen. We're so grateful to our panel for taking time to speak with us tonight and to Braxton Winston for moderating this discussion. By the way, Neighbors on Call, or NOC as we call it, is an all-volunteer organization that helps elect Democrats to the North Carolina State Legislature. We knock doors in the Greater Triangle area in the tightest state legislative races. Later in the program, we'll let you know how you can take action with us. Just to get everybody up to speed on a few basics about North Carolina, here's where we stand now at the top levels in our state's 3 branches of government. Our state in recent years has voted about 50-50 Democratic and Republican. We elected a Democratic governor in 2016, and this year in 2024, we need to elect a new governor due to term limits. But in the North Carolina General Assembly, that is the NCGA, Republicans currently hold a supermajority by exactly 1 seat in each chamber, which means they are able to override the governor's veto. In 2024, all seats in the NCGA are up for election. And after the 2030 census, the NCGA will draw new maps again. The state Supreme Court is now majority Republican. The only seat up for re-election this year is currently held by a Democrat, Justice Allison Riggs. Our panel tonight will tell us much more about how we got into this place in North Carolina politics and how we can ensure a better future for the people of our state. Here's what to expect tonight. In a few moments, we'll close the chat function to make it easier for us to focus on the conversation, but we'll reopen it again towards the end of the program. We don't anticipate really having much time tonight for Q&A, but we'll see how it goes. Now I'm going to pass the mic to Becca.
Hi, everyone. I'm Becca Zirkin. I am the other co-director of Neighbors on Call, and I am very pleased to introduce our panel. Anderson Clayton is the chair of the North Carolina Democratic Party. She was a rural organizer for Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, and a rural field director in Kentucky for Amy McGrath. She served as chair of the Person County Democratic Party and as chair of the State Association of County Chairs. Jonah Garson is the first vice chair of NCDP. He is an attorney. He has served as a fundraiser, a political organizer, and a field coordinator for dozens of legislative candidates, and as NCDP's Director of Voter Protection and Civic Engagement. He was also chair of the Orange County Dems. Dr. Kimberly Hardy is the second vice chair of NCDP. I know her computer chose to reboot just now, so if she's not here, she's coming in a second. She is a professor of social work at Fayetteville State University. Dr. Hardy ran for House District 43 in Cumberland County in 2020 and was president of the Democratic Women of Cumberland County. Elijah King is the third vice chair of NCDP. He is pursuing a political science degree at UNC Greensboro. He has held key leadership positions within the party, including the State Executive Committee, the 4th Congressional District, and the Durham Dems, and he's worked as a digital organizer in several states. Kian Sajati is the executive director of NCDP. Previously, he was a state program director for the AFL-CIO, national regional organizing director for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and a regional organizing director for the Nevada Democratic Party. Braxton Winston is our moderator tonight. He is the Democratic nominee for the North Carolina Commissioner of Labor. He served on the Charlotte City Council from 2017 through 2023 and as Mayor Pro Tem. He's running for Commissioner of Labor to make North Carolina the #1 state for business and workers. And now I will pass the mic to Braxton Winston.
Thank you so much, Susan and Becca. What a great room, a great crowd, and an amazing panel. I'm grateful to be able to moderate this discussion. I've been running around with these folks all over the state over the past 10 months or so. So I'm glad to be able to get in this room. And if y'all know Susan and Becca, you know they run a very tight ship. So we got a lot to cover, and we like to get it started on time and get you finished on time. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in since we got all the introductions out the way. The first part of the discussion, first question I have is for the Madam Chair. Anderson, it's been a heck of a year for you. I don't know if you remember, but you spoke on this platform about a year ago, right after you were elected. Can you kind of give us an update as to some of the goals that you've achieved, some that you may have not achieved, and whatever else you care to update us on over this past year?
Yes, thank you so much, Braxton, our future Commissioner of Labor, everyone, someone that's going to fight for workers across our state. We are so excited. And oh, Dr. Hardy is on as well. I know that her internet was popping out, but we've also got the full crew on here. It has been a year ago since all of us got elected together, and we all ran on a platform of change for the North Carolina Democratic Party and a platform of uplifting the voices on the ground and throughout our counties and throughout our state. And that's something that we all really took to heart. And so, as Braxton said, we have been out there on the ground. We have not stopped traveling since we got elected over a year ago to every single county across North Carolina, trying to tell the good work that the North Carolina Democrats are doing, and also connecting them with the resources and hearing from folks on the ground. A very big shout out to our own Dr. Kimberly Hardy, who's done a 30-county tour across Eastern North Carolina, Elijah King, who has been out at any county party event that will have him and will invite him and will take him, and then also to Jonah Garson, who is amped up and really given the energy that we needed throughout the state to all of our counties across it. I'm going to run through some of the things that we ran on and some of the wins that we've had, because to be honest with y'all, one of the things that I think that we don't do enough is celebrate those. And so actually, I should say first and foremost, thank you to Neighbors on Call for hosting this space. We did do this a year ago today, and that was something that I think was just a great platform that you all gave to the state party to connect us with a lot of grassroots folks on the ground, people that may or may not know what the state party does all the time, but we're really excited to be in front of y'all tonight. And so I hope you will pop questions as soon as we reopen the chat box into them. If you have them throughout, we want to make sure that we get all of them answered at some point tonight. If it's not on this call, in the future as well. So just that little note there also. But for looking at wins, I don't know about y'all, but if y'all saw, we had great wins as Democrats across the country in 2023, whether you were in Ohio, Virginia, right? Any of our states like Kansas that had amazing ballot initiatives that looked like winning on abortion rights and in places that we don't normally see that type of success. We also had great wins in the state of North Kakalaki. And that's something that I have been telling across the country to donors everywhere when it came to municipal races across the state in North Carolina. We were able to take back wins or have wins and take back councils and places that we had not been active in a very long period of time. And so a very big shout out to the folks on this call that may have contributed and been helping out with the Mecklenburg County Democratic Party and their very big successful wins in Huntersville. For those of you that are not aware, right, Mecklenburg County had the lowest voter turnout of any county in the state in 2022. It is also our second largest county in the state, y'all, which is a very, very, very big deal. And so when we saw the second largest city in Mecklenburg County have a council flip that went from red to blue in 2023, along with the mayor's office for the first time in history, we knew what success could look like in a county like Mecklenburg. And it meant when we put boots on the ground and we got out there and we talked to people, wins could happen, right? And Democrats could get elected. And it was important because we contested 1,100 out of 1,600 municipal races this year. Part of what this board ran on was building the bench across the state, something that this party has had a lack of in the past, right? An infrastructure build out. And municipal races were a huge part of that. So not only did we see them in places like Mecklenburg, but we saw them in places like Alamance County, where for those of you that were really involved in Ricky Hurtado's unfortunate defeat in 2022, a race that was lost by less than 500 votes, we saw Dewana Bigelow, the first ever Black woman, get on the city council in Burlington, something that was so exciting to the Alamance County Dems, where they were like, who's Ricky Hurtado? I mean, not really, but they gave the idea of, we can do this and we can win again in places like Alamance romance, even though 2022 really kicked our gears in, right, sometimes. And so places that needed to see those wins. Haywood County, another great example in the little town of Waynesville. I like to use that example a lot too, because it wasn't just in bright blue places that we won as Democrats. We also had wins in the ruralest and reddest of places. Waynesville had a pro-LGBTQ slate that got elected to their city council for the first time in history. We have a Democratic elected mayor in the city of Cool Me in Davie County, which went 70% for Donald Trump in 2020 and 2016. So there are extremely impossible and greatly possible things that Democrats can do when we get involved and we get active. And you all were such a huge part of that, because a lot of you on this call were our first time monthly donors to the state party. You all believed in us and got us going and really put that effort in. And so I can't thank you enough for giving us this platform tonight to really give y'all that appreciation and celebrate these wins together, because that's something we really want to do. And so not only did we have those in municipal races in 2023, but at the end of 2023, we were really able to celebrate another great success for the Democratic Party in North Carolina, which was contesting 168 out of 170 state House and Senate seats across the state. And for those of you that know why this is a big deal, a lot of you were around in 2018, perhaps, but we are in a Republican supermajority right now. And we know that in 2018, we were also under this same type of state legislature. We were able to break a supermajority by contesting all of our state House and Senate races this year. So a very, very big thank you and shout out to our caucus leadership for doing a great job in helping us with that. Senator Lisa Grafstein, Representative Vernetta Alston, folks that got out there and helped us work these county parties, that did outreach to folks on the ground. Everyone was involved and had a hand in recruitment this year. And that's something that our county parties and our state party will not ever take our hands off of again, because we know that recruiting the bench is one of our biggest things. And lastly, the thing that I'll go into, because I know we want to keep a tight ship, so I'm sorry, Braxton Winston, but a lot of things to brag about and a lot of things to be excited about. The North Carolina GOP is $72,000 in debt right now, y'all. And they just tapped Michael Watley, who is the person that led them into that, right? Unfortunately, to be the next chair of the RNC potentially. And I just think it's important for all of you on this call to know that not only is the North Carolina Democratic Party going to be going into 2023 or 2024 with organizers on the ground already, but also the aspect of $1.8 million cash on hand. So we are very, very excited about that. Thank you all so much. And also a shout out to Sarah Tabor, who's on this call tonight, who's running for Commissioner of Agriculture. Back to you, Braxton.
Well, we're going to stay here real quick. I know I'm going to go a little off script because you said something. You haven't just been traveling the state. You've been traveling all around the country, banging the drum for North Carolina Democrats, right? And far too often, North Carolina politics are in the news nationally for all the wrong reasons, a lot of embarrassing reasons. And it's not necessarily North Carolina Democrats' fault. But we know that this is going to be an important state for the national ticket come November. Can you just give us a little taste of what the reaction is that you're getting when you're traveling to other states and traveling to other talking with other Democratic leaders across the country?
Yeah, I was just in DC and New York. We did 2 fundraisers up there, and y'all, the entire time, everyone just kept coming up to me and they go, "We can feel the energy coming from your state right now." And I just think that is what everyone across the country feels, because there's a lot of, it's palpable, right? Like, I think every single person who's on this call on a Wednesday night at 7 p.m. can feel it, right? Like, that's why you're here. And it comes from having a really exciting officer board that's been going around, but also just people on the ground who are fed up and tired of what's happening in North Carolina. So thank you all for being on. But yeah, it's exciting.
But thank you for that update, Anderson. I'm going to kick it over to Jonah real quick. Can you give us a quick history lesson, good brother? What are the key turning points in North Carolina politics since, I guess, about 2010 that changed the trajectory of our state and got us to where we're at right now?
Okay, well, I'm going to tell like a slightly darker story than the story that Anderson
keep it real, man. Got to keep it real.
Year. So y'all buckle up, choose your metaphor, whether it's Empire Strikes Back or the crisis phase of a rom-com, whatever. That's what I'm about to describe. Okay, so first things first, we had the meet cute. We got to meet the amazing President Barack Obama and OFA in 2008, right? And we saw some amazing organizing across the state. And frankly, some party infrastructure that we hadn't seen before through his organizing operation. So fast forward 2 years later, it's 2010, and a couple of really bad things are happening behind the scenes as sort of the big, stupid GOP brains across the country are saying, how in the world, in the face of someone truly transformational like President Barack Obama and his OFA operation, how in the world do we entrench our power, democracy be damned, in the face of tidal demographic shift in the United States and North Carolina? If this is possible, then we're in trouble. And so they did a few things. Number one, they got together and executed a thing called Project Red Map. This was Karl Rove with a bunch of specific state funders, some of whom names who you all probably know, like Art Pope. Project Red Map set out to do this specifically. And listen up, because this is the formative plan that explains the 2 ensuing decades, okay? Project Red Map did this. It very strategically poured money into these not so sexy state legislative races in advance of the 2010 redistricting year in states where the General Assembly controlled the map drawing. So the whole plan was, we're going to pour some money into these races, so much money that folks won't know what has hit them. And we're going to get in charge. We're going to draw the maps, democracy be damned, gerrymander the hell out of them. And in that way, we'll be able to be calling the shots in a state like North Carolina for 2 decades. And that's exactly what they did. Oh, and don't forget that also in the summer of 2010, a decision came down from our United States Supreme Court called Citizens United, allowing endless amounts of dark money to pour in, also in service of this bigger cause, Project Red Map. And so in North Carolina, OFA, President Obama's big reforming, amazing boots on the ground organizing program had pulled out after 2008, all right? And so here we are in 2010, and we are clobbered. We are clobbered. I was a staffer at the General Assembly at the time. I watched my bosses get routed from power, their legacies torn up. I think probably a lot of y'all were present then too and felt the pain of that moment, or maybe were working in state government or in political advocacy, and it was gutting because President Obama had won in 2008 and then the bottom dropped out. And so what happened in 2012, after they had already gerrymandered the hell out of the maps, after the census, the NCGOP gained a supermajority. We got the bathroom bill. We got attacks on the independence of our judiciary beginning in a new way. We had attacks on the power of the executive from a General Assembly that was already structurally the most powerful General Assembly in the entire country, no matter who was in control, right? And we saw this, and it was brutally effective. It explains the moment we're in. We are now in decade 2 of the fallout from Project Red Map. That is where we sit. So people back in 2010, as they looked around at the just destruction, at the wasteland post-2010, at the sort of complete sea change in who was in charge, a lot of folks at that time said, well, things need to change. We got a glimpse of what some of these changes might look like with President Obama's OFA operation, with boots on the ground organizers across the state. But we see a Democratic Party that since OFA pulled out, really doesn't seem to suit the times. It's not there with physical presence across the state. We still are sort of doing the cycle to cycle thing where we sort of abandon our voters for most of an election cycle and then come pop up back up and say, hey, it's us, don't you love us, right? We saw, anachronistic bylaws that probably needed to be changed. And we began to see other amazing battleground states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Georgia and others sort of take hard-learned lessons. Many of them were also subject to Project Red Map, hard-learned lessons and change themselves and work to build a better Democratic Party to suit the times.
Yeah. Well,
Go ahead, Braxton.
Dr. Hardy, I think you might need to see if you can pull Professor Garrison over here for a history professor position, because that was a great job. So you gave us a very detailed history. I want to bring it back to Madam Chair to say, okay, we know where we're coming from. What kind of electoral goals do we need to achieve here in 2024 and over the next few elections after that to get North Carolina back on the right track to take care of all of our people in spite of the history lesson that Vice Chair Garson just gave us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to bring us back to where Becca and Susan had originally when they pulled up the first slideshow that they were presenting, right? Of the fact that we now have a 48 House Democrats, right, in the state House right now. We have 72 Republicans in the state House. We have 20 Democrats in the state Senate and 30 Republicans in the state Senate. So effectively, right, we are in super minorities in both of our chambers. What you all are familiar with, right, is the fact that Trisha Cotham, or she shall not be named in some ways. Someone told me earlier her name was like Beetlejuice. I think it was Kim Hardy. And like, she magically appears. But obviously when Trisha Cotham switched parties on us last year, that was something that really took our party backwards. But I think that it's important to remind people about what happened in 2022 in North Carolina. In 2022, Sherry Beasley won 5 House districts that we should have kept. And she won them, right? And we lost them by 500 votes or less. One of those races being Ricky Hurtado's seat. And so I tell people that it's really important to realize that we are going to break a supermajority this year. If we do our jobs correctly, we break them a supermajority in the state House and in the state Senate, right? And we've got to do that through the 5 seats that you all had up here for the state Senate, I do believe earlier, which looked like state Senate district number 7. If you're David Hill or if anyone's in New Hanover County, right, looking at that area, Senate District 11, which is James Mercer, who's running in Franklin and Vance counties, Senate District 18, Terrence Everett, who is running in Granville and Wake counties, Senate District 13, Lisa Grafstein, who's running in Wake County, and Senate District 42, Woodson Bradley, who's running in Mecklenburg County. And I give you those because those are the 5 Senate districts that we really need to keep, but also we need to break the supermajority with this year in the state Senate. And then also for our state House, we have 7 seats that we've been targeting. And I think that all of you, I think those were actually the ones that were up there earlier, Becca, if I'm not mistaken. But looking at races like Dante Pittman, right, in Wilson County, an opportunity for a hometown boy to really make a good difference in his backyard, but also somebody who could be one of the youngest state legislators that we could have this year. Looking at Brian Cohen in Granville and Vance counties, Sophia Jackson in House District 37, right, in Wake County, Lindsay Prather, who's trying to keep her seat in House District 115 in Buncombe County. There is a lot of overlap with our state House and Senate districts that are competitive this year, which is going to be a great advantage to the state party and where we can deploy resources. And so what Jonah was alluding to earlier is the fact that we have started Project 100, which is our year-round organizing program in the state party. I see Sarah O'Brien on this call, so a very big shout out to our organizing director, who is also very familiar with all of the folks that are on this call too right now, I'm sure, in one way or the other. But Project 100 is effectively North Carolina's version of what Michigan and Wisconsin have of their year-round organizing programs. And we did Project 100 because we got 100 counties in North Carolina, which is unlike Michigan or Wisconsin, which I just need to let both of y'all know that, or everyone on this call know that for both of them. The only state that really rivals us, right, is like Kentucky with 120 counties, or Texas. But 100 counties, Project 100, and that's because we want to have an organizing presence in all of them. And so that's been something that we have really tried to double down the efforts on this year of showing up. But I also want to point out what Jonah was talking about earlier with our courts being the most important races on our ballots this year. Our Supreme Court, right? We have 1 seat up on our Supreme Court this year. It is a democratically held seat. Justice Allison Riggs right now currently holds it. She is in a primary, right, for our general election coming up in November. But we need to hold that seat. And in 2026, Justice Anita Earls' seat is also up on our Supreme Court. Something that took Wisconsin 12 years to do could take North Carolina 6, but we have the opportunity to take back our courts in 2028. There are 3 Republican seats that are up, and the opportunity for us to take folks from our Court of Appeals and run them on our Supreme Court and building the bench back to take back our courts. Because our courts this last year, right, have fundamentally revoked and stripped people of the rights to vote. They have stripped folks of bodily autonomy, and they have rolled back rights in our states. And we need to make sure that folks understand what's on the line for that this year. But I also want to point out something that's even when I was really like, when we're looking into the maps of how we take back North Carolina, our Court of Appeals, y'all, there are 3 seats that are up this year. But for those of you that don't know, there are 15 seats on our Court of Appeals. Democrats hold 4 of them right now. 15. We hold 4 of them. Also, by 2028, we have the ability to take back our Court of Appeals. There are 3 seats that are up in 2023 or 2024, 3 seats up in 2026, and 5 seats that are up in 2028. All 5 of those are Republicans. And so looking at the long-term trajectory of what our state can do, we have got to protect seats on our courts in 2024 and 2026, because both of those are democratically held seats that will be up. And in 2028, we take Republicans for everything they've got in North Carolina, y'all. Truly, from the courts to the legislature and everywhere else in between. And we keep our governor's seat in the meantime with that too. And we take back our Council of State. North Carolina is only a handful of states across the country that elect our Council of States. As of right now, there are 10 people on our Council of State, where Democrats hold 4 of those positions, Republicans hold 6. If we take back our Council of State this year, we give folks the opportunity, we give our governor the opportunity to have emergency powers in full, which is something that can enable something that Republicans in this legislature stripped him of the right of in the last 2 years, because they didn't believe that we would hold the governor's seat. And they did not believe that we would take Council of State. So I know that I just gave y'all a lot about what we've got to take back in 2024. But for those of you that are not aware, we have got 15 statewide elected roles this year that are up in North Carolina. All of them are important, but all of them represent great demographics that will help us get out folks from across the state, including like our own moderator, Braxton Winston from Mecklenburg County.
Well, thank you very much. What I tell a lot people all over the state, you can't gerrymander the whole state. So we get folks out. And as Anderson said, there's a lot of work to get done. And, you know, while we're working hard, the 6 of us right here, it's going to take you folks out there watching to get this done. So I think right now, Becca and Susan have a bit of a call to action, which you can participate in to help us achieve these important goals that the officers are laying out for us.
Thank you so much for giving me a minute to share these, Braxton. So Neighbors on Call is doing our part to break the supermajority this year, and we are focusing on 5 state legislative candidates who are key to breaking the supermajority. Some are in seats we must protect, some are in seats that we must flip. And where their districts overlap, as Anderson mentioned, the House and Senate candidates are collaborating so that we can canvass for 2 at one time. So please join us for one of the upcoming canvasses organized by these candidates in Wake and Granville counties. In Granville County with Representative Terrence Everett and Brian Kahn, including this Sunday in Creedmoor. And also, let me just give a shout out to the Neighbors on Call volunteers. 72 of us showed up on Saturday in Fuquay Arena and 58 the weekend before in Wake Forest. And we're expecting another big crowd in Creedmoor, so please do join us. Then we'll be in Fuquay Arena with Senator Lisa Grafstein and Sophia Jackson, and we'll be in Wake Forest with Representative Terrence Everett and Yvonne Hopkins. If you like, you can sign up as a silent canvasser. We will match you with a mentor who will do all the talking. And on March 23rd, please join us for a special day of action with the Wilson County Dems and County to County to help Dante Pittman flip House District 24. And finally, join us by Zoom on Thursday, February 22nd at 7 p.m. to learn more about Neighbors on Call and how we make it easy to get started with canvassing, even if you're nervous about it, which we totally understand. And you can sign up for all of these things at neighborsoncall.org, and we will send you the links in a follow-up email tomorrow. Thank you so much, Braxton, for letting me have that moment, and I will pass it back to you.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate, again, Neighbors on Call for doing this work. This is not easy work, organizing people, you know, in anything, but especially when it comes to elections. And, you know, as you are walking around, I think anybody who's ever worked on a campaign probably understands this, that there are more people out there than you can probably reach, especially with the limitations on three specific things: time, money, and daylight. You know, if we had unlimited amounts of those, we can probably get a lot more done. So we have a lot of really smart people working on these campaigns that really help us focus on the who we should be targeting and where we should be targeting. And this is where I want to bring Elijah in. Who and where are the voters that we especially need to reach in order to win these elections? So the folks that are going on these canvases are being maximum effective when they're out there.
Well, thank you so much for that question, Braxton. And hello, neighbors on call. I think the who and where is a super interesting question, right? Because there are so many possible answers. In regards to the who, I think we have endless possibilities when it comes to our Hispanic and Asian voters. Those communities have been largely untouched and ignored by the party in the past, right? So when we look at the numbers and see of Latinx people eligible to vote, register and vote in North Carolina, only 36% registered to vote, and of those, only 25% of them cast a ballot. Only about 11,659 people in the Latinx community between the ages of 18 and 25 voted, and that's 14% of the Latinx electorate. I'm talking about the Asian community in 2022. Asian Americans are the fastest growing ethnic group in North Carolina, with a 64% increase from 2010 to 2020, and have been largely untouched by either party. These are facts. And so these are the voters that we need to reach out to win elections across the board heading into November. When we're talking about the where, the western part of the state has massive potential, Braxton. This is evident by the early voting turnout in Western North Carolina's 11th congressional district, which had the highest turnout in the state in 2022. This is where the votes are on the margins, and this is where we need to be. Not only the party, but our amazing candidates, our statewide candidates. So I can imagine some of you are probably like, the Western counties are red counties. Why invest in those? Statewide candidates, as we all know, get all of those votes, including you, Braxton. And so if we want to move the needle on those council state positions that Anderson spoke about, we need to be everywhere. And I think the whole board has been everywhere. Kim has gone to her 30 counties. I've been to about a third of the state. Anderson's been everywhere, and Jonah's been going places. So empowering our regional organizers, such as our Western regional organizer, Michael Correccia, to organize and grow relationships will increase the vote and will be vital to winning in 2024.
No, well, thank you for that. And I can tell you from my experience, the Department of Labor, as well as Dr. Tabor, who's running for agriculture, that Latinx population is very important because they are underrepresented a lot of times, but they make up a large part of the workforce,
huge part of the electorate,
in the largest sector of our economy, and especially in those rural counties where you do see population decline. You see great growth in the Latinx population, right? So when we're thinking forward to 2040, how do we make sure that those voters are voting Democrat is going to be integral, of course, into winning the elections this year, but winning elections over and over and over again. So, but to that point, once we identify who and where, we need to make sure that we are messaging correctly, right? And understand why those groups who should be voting Democrat have not been voting Democrat. So, Dr. Hardy, I want to bring you in. This is probably not the most glamorous question, but why do you think that those voters haven't necessarily been excited about voting for Democrats and or not excited about voting in general?
Well, thanks for that. And hi, neighbors on call, and all 323 of you. You all are amazing. So before I attack that, I will say the eastern part of the county also of the state also needs a lot of love and attention, and that's why I have focused my 30 county tour. County number 19 is this Saturday in Pitt, but I'm all over the place. I told the folks in Polk County I drove up a mountain for you guys, and everybody on this call knows I don't do mountains, but I drove up a mountain in Henderson and Allegheny County because I go wherever they need me. I'm in Lincoln County. I'm all over the place. I'll be in Alamance in a couple of weeks, for precinct organizing. Like, we go wherever we're asked to go. If you call us, we will be there. But when I decided to put together this tour, it was because I could see that the eastern part of the state was not getting the attention that it needed. But to Elijah's point, it's really pardon the way of saying it, but bi-coastal, if you will. The far out regions are not really getting the kind of attention that they need to. But we have to remember that our candidates who are council of state get votes from everywhere. And so it's important for folks to go out there. But one of the reasons that I think people aren't very excited, I am specifically focused on African-American voters. So let me talk about that. Even though I know that it's incredibly important that we can that we engage with the Latinx community as well. In fact, at the Duplin County cake auction, I described my cake in English and in Spanish. So like, I understand the necessity of engaging with people exactly right where they are. That's just the social worker in me. But in terms of the rural African-American voters in the eastern part of the state, for example, there's a couple of different reasons. One of them is that they feel disrespected. That was a poignant use of language that was used by Mayor Pro Tem of Burgaw when I was out in Pender County, where he said that folks never come out there. Candidates don't come out there for statewide races, and the state party never shows up there either. If I had a nickel for every time I heard someone out east say, oh, we're the redheaded stepchild of the state party or of the state in general, we could fund another regional organizing director. But that's not going to get it done. So if you guys want to donate to the party, go right ahead. Because we still do need to get more of those folks on the ground, because that's going to help us in big ways. So one of them is they feel disrespected because they're feeling like no one is coming out to talk to them. And if you don't come out to hear people, then what is it that makes you think that they're going to stay engaged with you, loyal to you? That's not how relationships work, right? Relationships have to be built and then sustained over time. And that's nothing that we have been doing sort of writ large. This administration has put a great deal of emphasis in doing that. But the other issue is folks feel like they've been taken for granted. Like there's just this presumption that African-American voters are going to vote Democratic, because where else are they going to go? And so what we've seen is certain numbers of Black men in particular voting for the Republican ticket, but then a lot of people who just aren't voting at all. And I think another one of the reasons is because either when they have voted in the past, there hasn't been any sort of on the ground difference. There's nothing changing in their lives when they go out and vote. And we all know that voting isn't arduous for the average person. But if I live in, say, Anson County, and I have a municipal election and we don't have early vote, we have one day. And I don't work in Anson County, so I've got to get up in the morning and leave really early. And by the time I get back, I leave before the polls are open. I come back when they're about to close. I've got kids, I've got dinner, I've got homework, I've got laundry. Like, it's not as simple as just, oh, I'm going to go vote today for everybody. And so we need to be very mindful of the fact that when people do take the time out to vote, they want to see some results that come to their way, and it doesn't happen. Or even if they don't vote, I met some folks in Lenore County who said, I've never voted a day in my life. And they haven't seen a difference between whether they did or they didn't. I've actually heard someone say, I survived 4 years of Trump. I've done 4 years of so-and-so, 4 years. Like, for them, it's the kitchen table issues that are not getting addressed, and the changes in their individual local communities are not evident to them. They're not feeling Bidenomics necessarily. And so it's hard to get motivated and excited to do this thing that when you have done it or your neighbors have done it, doesn't seem to bring anything with it. So they feel a sense of individual and collective low efficacy, like they don't have the capacity to change the issues that they're experiencing or bring about the changes they'd like to see. And so I think that's part of what the problem is. Messaging is another issue.
Yeah, and I want to get to that messaging because you said a couple things. One, you mentioned Duplin County and the cake auction. Thank you for purchasing my work boot cake.
It was delicious.
I think it was the best cake. If you want to see it, go check it out on social media at Vote Braxton. put my heart, my literal foot into it, you know?
Yes, he did.
But you mentioned something about, for example, Black men. And to
Mhm.
be completely honest, this was one of my rationales for hopping into this race, figuring out how to be effective statewide. Because in some of the conversations that I've been having with my brothers, very concerned for where the priorities are, and honestly, the understanding, like you said, of the implications of votes, whether it's this year or into the future. But as you mentioned, getting that message right is so important to really challenge folks, but without necessarily further disrespecting them, right? You don't want to come into somebody's living room and tell them the way they should think, especially if you haven't been knocking on their door for a decade before. So how do you get that right targeted message in front of the right audiences?
So I think you can't message about us without us, right? I think you all remember a bunch of years ago or yesterday in Congress when a bunch of men were discussing reproductive justice and abortion bills. And it was like, the audacity, the unmitigated gall, right? To have a bunch of men making decisions about the reproductive choices of women. It's madness. And so if you're going to message, you have to be very clear that you're messaging to people that you want to vote for you. So it matters what they have to say. And so as part of it was probably like 4 counties in that I got really tired of hearing people say, well, no statewide candidates ever come here. And so I started bringing statewide candidates like you, Braxton, with me everywhere I go. So all the campaigns are always invited. And if they can make it, they come with. And just so that you know, everybody on the call, they speak after me, because there's none of that give your 5-minute stump speech and then leave your lit on the table and go. They stay there because they get to hear the listening part of my listening tour, so they can know what are the issues, what are the reasons people aren't coming, what are the issues that are affecting people in their day-to-day lives, and then find a way to make your campaign message make sense to that. And I will give Braxton a huge shout out for this, because he talks about labor as something more than just the faces and the elevators across the state, right? He talks about the importance of worker safety, like having the important footwear that I ate after the Duplin County cake auction. You just got to go to his website to see what we're talking about. But you also talked about how labor is responsible for the safety and upkeep of the theme parks and the carnivals, and that's a safety issue for our kids, and reminding them of that terrible roller coaster situation we saw. Like, it really made it real for people. And so when you message, your message needs to be grassroots in its orientation. If you know what labor does, what agriculture does, what the auditor does, right, then find a way to make that make sense to the people at the grassroots level. What is it about your office that directly affects their lives, and then message that way. But also message in culturally competent ways. So, por ejemplo, yo hablo español, pero soy morena, no soy Latina. I speak Spanish, but I'm not a Latina woman. I'm an African American woman. And so even though I can talk to someone in their native language, la cultura es diferente. The culture is different. And so it's important to understand that not everybody who speaks Spanish is of the same culture, and not everybody who is Latinx speaks Spanish. And so it's important that we message that, so that the messages and the issues that you're running on are relevant to their daily lived experiences, it's in a language that makes sense for you. Madam Chair has been saying since we got elected, and I think we're almost there, that the website for NCDP is going to be translated into Spanish. And I have encouraged our statewide candidates to make sure they have literature there as well. I've reached out to to what's his name? Who's my rod? Daniel. Daniel French is our regional organizing director for where Union County is. And we have been trying to work together on putting together a canvas that is specifically for the Latinx community, because they have been so overlooked. And when we do that, we want everything from language to iconography to issues to match the populations. So on February 10th, for example, is coming up Saturday, since you all like knocking doors so much, feel free to join us. I have got 6 of the counties that I'm going to are going to do canvases I've gone to these 6 counties. I know these people, I know the issues, and I know they need the help. And so because it's African American voters and it's Black History Month, we have one that is very, very colorful in the sort of iconic picture colors of African American communities in Black History Month, but also where the messages make sense. I will be launching the one in Lenore County. We're also doing Scotland, Edgecombe, Nash, Perquimans, and my home county of Cumberland. So if you're wanting to do that, I'll put those links in the box for you for Mobilize. But you have to get out there where they are. Here's another thing that's very important, though. Getting the message in front of people means you have to be in front of people. It's not enough to just do social media. I am not on TikTok. I don't really care for Instagram, but I do it anyway because there is a community of people that's watching that and you want to be able to engage with them. But the people who are not going to be sitting on a neighbor's on Zoom at 8:16 on a Wednesday night they're not engaged in that way. Again, social workers believe in starting where the client is. You need to go to them. And so when I bring these folks out, when I bring the statewide candidates out, when I go to these counties, I'm literally on the ground all day. It's not just the meeting at the end of the night. I'm in restaurants and barbershops, the mall, all the different 2- and 4-year colleges. I'm talking to people randomly on the street about what are the issues here and why folks aren't voting. You can't do that if you don't show up in front of them. So media, social media, all of that is important, but that is not going to get you the voters who are registered but never show or aren't registered at all because they don't think it matters.
And so I want to thank you for that. I want to kick it to Elijah real quick before we pass it to our ED for a little bit. But I often get called a young leader, and I like to remind people that I just turned 41 years old, and while I might be younger than many people at my age, people have been voting for 23 years, right? Since they're 18. What I love about who I'm surrounded by is that we have a spread of ages now on our elected officers, right?
Yep.
But messaging and getting out to those younger folks, particularly between, let's say, from my age on down to 18, is a particular challenge, not just for North Carolina Democrats, but for our country overall. So Elijah, really quickly, how can the party reach out and activate younger people? And what are the messages that you think might resonate this year moving forward?
Of course, I get this question. I'm the youngest on the board, and I'm the only current college student, so this makes sense. But like I said earlier, Braxton, let's look at the numbers. Young voters reliably trend Democrat, but that passion advocacy doesn't always drive and translate to the polls. Turnout is much lower than other age groups. And I think for example, 60% of 18 to 25-year-olds voted in North Carolina in 2020. 84% of voters 65 and up voted in that same election. Then in 2022, only 24% of 18 to 25-year-olds voted in North Carolina. And so the North Carolina Democratic Party, as you know, Braxton, but for everyone else, has a series of caucuses and auxiliaries, including 3 that are youth-related, the Young, College, and Teen Democrats in North Carolina. And so I think that the party can continue reaching out and activating these auxiliaries to raise money, which they've been doing an amazing job doing. Shout out to Dorian Palmer, who is the president of Young Democrats, allowing them to run their own operation. That's the way to go. This is their wheelhouse. And so like Dr. Hardy said, it's additionally, like Dr. Hardy said, it's not just about social media. It's about allowing students, allowing young people to get on the ground and make a ground game for their campuses, much like we did in 2022 on UNCG's campus where I go. Additionally, on the county level, I think that the gold standard for how to reach and activate young people and to fine tune that messaging is UNC's campus organizing project right over in Chapel Hill. This campus organizing project organized by the Orange County Democratic Party, shout out to Chair Cassie Rice and Councilman Theodore Noller, empowers students and young people to organize on and around campuses, their campus. And so this is about giving students the resources and tools to organize amongst themselves. And I think that's super important. And as to messaging, since you asked, a lot of folks are working on the best way to message to young voters. Again, Orange County Democrats are going to begin message testing in the spring. Multiple C3s and C4s are working on message testing over the next few months. So folks are actively trying to find the best message that will resonate with young voters. But like I say a lot, there are thousands of young people, and I don't know all the answers. But message testing is going to be super important, especially in the next few months, to make sure that we're successful going into 2024.
Well, when you figure it out, please let me know so I can figure out how to communicate to my 17-year-old son so he'll listen to me. So I appreciate that. But this point in time, I do want to bring our good brother Keon into this. Welcome to the North Carolina Dems. I know you've been here for a while. Welcome to North Carolina. I think this is the first time we've really been able to interact, and I hope to do it much more. As we see you throughout the state. But your role is very different than the elected officers or somebody like myself who is running a campaign and hoping to ascend to elected office. Can you tell us a little bit about the ED role? What is it? And tell us a little bit about your priorities in it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Braxton. Thanks for having me and for moderating this panel here. So the role of ED is very all-encompassing, I would say. It changes day to day. I feel like I wear a lot of hats, but day to day I manage the directors. I do a lot of hiring of director level staff. I provide a lot of coaching, a lot of guidance. I work with the departments on creating things like the budget, the overall budget for our 2024 cycle. We do a lot of strategic planning. We do a lot of working with partner organizations. Right now, my big priorities are sort of getting acquainted with our Biden team that, of course, has been named. So we are sort of in the very early stages of the coordinated campaign discussions, which is going to be the broader sort of presidential, state party, statewide campaign for this cycle. And my priorities there are just to make sure that we get as good of a deal as possible, that we have a large investment, and that investment is targeted at the right areas, that our win number is kind of sussed out. We're in the process of building our turnout and our persuasion models to know exactly how many voters we need to talk to. That'll give us an idea of things like scale in terms of number of organizing staff, where those people need to be located. And so those are sort of our midterm priorities. But yeah, I also represent us at the ASDED with all the other state executive directors. Anderson, Jonah, and I were just in San Diego for our ASDC meeting, and got to meet a lot of my peers from different states. So I've got a lot of folks who have been doing this for a long time to kind of bounce ideas off of. But yeah, I would say my day changes, and it is often very busy. And I apologize if folks have emailed me and I've not gotten back. I get a lot of people ask for stuff.
He is being very, very modest. Look, the staff at the NCDP is incredibly talented. And these folks are pumping out the work. They're building the websites. They're helping to raise the money. They're designing things. They talked about this Project 100, very ambitious. That means there's a lot more candidates that we've had than in the past. And it's the folks that are part of the staff that are doing that legwork under the water and kicking really hard. And it's not always pretty, but it's so other five of us can show up to places, look good, smile, and deliver the message. But it only happens because of the NCDP staff that is kicking like hell underneath that water. So how do you think, and as you well know, that staff changes over time. It grows when we get closer to elections, and it shrinks after. So how do you intend to build up the NCDP infrastructure to reach the not just 2024 goals, but these 2030 goals? What's in place now, and what will it look like later this year? What are you aiming, and give us a little hint about what you may be aiming for over the next few years. I understand that you're just still ramping up. So I know that was a lot, but answer it as you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that building the infrastructure of the party is kind of two parts. It's the staff, of course, making sure that we get qualified folks, making sure that we're doing ongoing training and we're really investing in people's skill set. I always try to build teams that are very well-rounded, that are very resilient, because I have yet to get through a campaign where something just totally out of left field has not been thrown in our path. And I find that the best teams are ones that have that kind of that calmness, that sort of well-rounded skill set, and are able to continue to perform at a high level. So at this point, while we still have a bit of runway before the election, we're doing a lot of planning, a lot of training. We're sort of identifying the any skills gaps that we might have as a team, getting our systems internally kind of tightened up, our communication structures, so we make sure that information is getting to the right place quickly. We're also going to be using this primary as a chance to test some of our systems. This is going to be kind of like I hesitate to call it a dry run because it is a real election. But we are going to be testing out a lot of our systems specifically around voter protection. We're going to be tracking issues that people are having at polling sites, where those are located, what types of issues they are, the scale of a potential issue. As many of you know, that there's been a lot of changes to voter laws for this cycle. That's going to be new for a lot of folks who have been voting for a long time. So we're really curious to see, once we sort of like open the floodgates to more of your general voting audience, to see what type of issues come up, and that'll help us sort of determine where we need to continue to train and continue to fill some of the gaps that might exist. In terms of the scale, I think that it's hard to say at this point. That'll be highly dependent on what type of investment we get from the coordinated campaign. I would like to see a lot of staff. I hesitate to throw out a number, but I would not be surprised if there's over 100 human people here in the state working. So it should be great. But that'll really depend on the case that we're able to make for the coordinated, how quickly they're able to invest money. Obviously, when they approve a staff position, it takes time to do interviews, to source resumes, to get somebody in the door. So we're really hoping and pushing for early investments, large investments, and we're very thankful that the Biden team named their state staff so quickly. And we're actively in discussions with them about their timeline and what we can expect from them. And I think on the infrastructure side, it also depends on the people that live here, because I know that many of you who have been around campaigns know that people come from all over the country. I'm from Nevada. I'm here in the wonderful state of North Carolina now, but that's not uncommon for campaign staff to kind of move over the country. And often people will sort of move on to their next thing, move out of state after the campaign is over. But really, the judge of any successful program is, of course, winning at the end of the day. But also, it's about what you leave behind, and that is training the volunteers, training the the neighborhood teams, the folks that you can really spend the time training on how to have conversations with voters, how to have effective one-on-ones, how to do relational organizing. All of these skills are things that we can really impart on the volunteers and the leaders that are here in the state, who are going to continue to be here cycle after cycle. And I think that that's one of the keys, is to really make sure that we're spending the time now, investing in training, investing in skill sets, really making sure that we are a resource for people across the state, not just for our staff internally, but I like to make sure that volunteers, leaders, county chairs, district chairs know that they can come to us if they need something, if they need a training deck, if they want someone to come and talk to their folks. We really are here to support all of you, and that's really what I view a good, well-functioning state party as, is something that can really be a resource for people across the state, and that really sort of gives people meaningful skills that are going to help us actually win this thing at the end of the day.
Thank you for that. And that leads me to my next question, and I'm going to kick it to Professor Garson up there. I know we're Susan and Becca are looking at the time, and they want to get us out of here close to 8:30 as possible. But as Keon said, it's going to depend on the investment, right? So how much is all of this going to cost, and how are we doing with fundraising? And give us a little bit of an idea of where this money comes from.
I'll start running my mouth, but I'm going to encourage our amazing chair, Anderson Clayton, who has been our top fundraiser for the party, to come right in and correct me. I think it was 3.4 million at the end of the year. I mean, Anderson threw out the cash on hand figure, but 3.4, 3.7 says Anderson. That's right. 3.7 million. I knew it. I knew you'd be there for me. 3.7 million. And that exceeded our fundraising goal, which we set as a stretch goal. And a lot of that fundraising is directly attributable to Anderson's call time and hustling in state and out of state. The whole board has been involved in fundraising. It has been a team effort. We came in understanding that we were not in a great place financially, understanding that we had to address some pretty serious and heady credibility deficits with the grassroots and the donor folks alike, right? And I don't know, I'm sure a lot of folks on this call have stepped into organizations that they care about, that they love, either on boards or whatever, but that had some problems. And it's hard to both sort of do the things you need to do to keep the organization growing and building, while at the same time leveling with folks and say, hey, we have a lot of work to do still. we need a lot more money if we're going to get Project 100 and Sarah O'Brien's organizing team fully funded with regional organizing directors across the state, building banks of voter contacts, doing voter engagement work all the time. I do not want it to be the case that we go out and have our day of action this Saturday and Kim's knocking on doors in Lenore County and Elijah's down in Scotland County knocking doors and I'm in Edgecombe County, and we don't have robust voter engagement efforts in the next quarter, right? I don't want a quarter to go by where folks don't get a touch. So we need many, many more millions of dollars this even year to make it work. Anderson and Denise Cheney, our state party treasurer of Eflin, Orange County, North Carolina, they're both here, and we've been swimming in budget and numbers. And I don't know if either Anderson or Denise or anyone else has anything to add.
I would just say on the piece, I'm gonna jump in, Braxton, if that's okay. On the piece, Keon did a great job, I think, at explaining kind of what it looks like for infrastructure wise. Something that we did differently this year for our budget that I think is important to note is that we put organizers in the budget as like permanent staff. And that's something that the state party's not done before. It was only 4 of them, so I'm not gonna lie to y'all, it's not my like perfect formula for what I would love to have in the budget, but like it was what we knew based on raising 3.7 in a 2023 year that like we can do this again and have this many people because it's a guaranteed sort of like we can budget out, right? We know we're going to raise more money in 2024 than that. And the idea is that we're going to need to because it's a presidential election year. But even in a year like 2025, we can still sustain a programmatic goal like that with the money that we have. And the idea is this year, as we get more funding for our organizing program, because Jonah is kind, we did hit our goal, but I would say like there were 2 goals last cycle, right? We had a programmatic goal and we had a like actual an actual budget that we came in under, right? So we had our organizing goal was our programmatic goals, and then we had an operational budget that we came in under that was around a $2.1 million budget. Our organizing program averages out to be about a $1.9 million budget because we want to have 14 regional organizing directors that actually end up across the state, 1 per congressional district. We have 3 of those people right now, and we have an organizing director in Sarah and a training director in Christy. In the past, the state party has also combined those 2 positions for an organizing director and a training director. We made those 2 things separate because, as any of you all know that have been in large organizations or corporations before, those are 2 separate roles. And so really trying to professionalize the state party staff, bring on year-round organizing in a way like we've not done before. But it is a slow build, and it's something where folks have looked at me a year ago, and one of the things that I got asked when I first got on here is what's something you haven't done yet that you wish like had come to fruition a little bit faster? It would be this. It would be the year-round organizing. But I think we're building it in a way that is sustainable for the state party, and something that when we all came in, the state party, for any of you though, or any of you folks that are real budget nerds on here, to be honest with you, the state party lived a little bit paycheck to paycheck at one point in time. And we have 3 months cash on hand for the state party, right? That's something we always want to stay at going forward for us now. We want to be an effective organization. And that also means knowing how to have, monthly donors, right, is a part of knowing how much money we have cash on hand, being able to actually say that we have donors that are going to be giving us 6 figures every year, right? Going to Art Pope us a little bit in this party. There are things like that that we have to do and that we have done over the last year to make the state party an actual functioning organization that I think is important just to note in that. So sorry, Braxton, to come in so much.
No. Well, I don't want to cut you off, but you're feeding right into really the last question. We're at 8:34. We're a little behind schedule, but this is great. We could keep doing this for probably another hour and a half or 2. But Anderson, we really want you to give us this last call to action. What does the North Carolina Democratic Party need from us? Remind us of what we need to achieve this year. And what do you need from all of us that are on this Zoom, whether participating or watching? What do you need from us to win?
Yeah, I need your time and energy and your treasure and anything else that you are willing to give, because I think if we don't do it now and this year, we can go to sleep for 10 years, North Carolina, in a lot of ways. And I know that sounds damning, and I think that it sounds hard, but it is what we're up against in this election cycle. Folks ask every single one of our board members why we are so energetic and excited and everywhere across the state. It's because every single person on this panel right now knows the moment that we're in. They know the urgency of it, and they know what's at stake in North Carolina, and they're ready to fight for it like hell. And I need every single one of you to be willing to do that with us this year. And so if you've not knocked a door, made a phone call in your life, like I'm going to ask you to do it this year. Becca and Susan are going to ask you to do it this year. Every person on this panel is going to ask you to do it this year. And I need y'all to do it this year, because if we don't do it in 2024, it doesn't matter after that. And it does, because organizing always does. And we're never going to give up on North Carolina. That's something too, regardless of what happens in 2024. I feel the need to say that always. I'm from a part of the state where we don't normally win elections, to be honest with y'all. We put up fights in elections, and that's what we do. Because I am from rural North Carolina. And so that is what it is about in a lot of ways. Shout out to Vicky Hill on this call right now. But I think it is really important for every single one of you to know that there is an exciting plan, opportunities for you to pick up and put your hand on this thing that we care about called democracy this year and drive it forward. But I need all of you to do it with us. And so whether that be your participation in Neighbors on Call, in your local county party, with your local candidates, somebody running for office statewide, regardless of how you get involved this cycle, just get involved and just do it. It is the easiest thing that you can do, I think. And so please consider donating, support Neighbors on Call, support county to county, support programs that we have, support the state party, support your local county parties, and support the efforts that you really think and that you deem are doing the work in your backyard this year, regardless of which organizations that may look like. So I'm just really, really happy to have everyone on the call. And another shout out, I know that someone already did it earlier, I think it was Elijah, but Cassie Rice is the chair of our Chairs Association. She is also one of our board members. She has done an amazing job in Orange County, really bringing all of our county chairs up to speed. So a very big shout out to her. I already shouted out Sarah O'Brien. I saw Claire Kempner on this call. She's running for House District 9. Thank you for running for office, Claire. I really appreciate you. Vincent Beza is our senior Dems caucus chair. Shout out Vincent for all the things that you are doing. Amy Taylor North, I didn't see you on this call, but I see you in the chat right now. Thank you for running for office. And I also see Tay Wilkinson on this call, who is our recruitment director for the House caucuses. So thank you, Tay, for all the work that you did this year to help us fill those seats too. I think I got everybody. Actually, wait, Daniel Franch is also on this call. So Daniel Franch and Michael Kretschia and Brittany Louder are the three organizers that we have for the state party in their respective regions. And I really appreciate them. Okay, I'm done now. Back to you, Braxton.
Don't forget to give to your candidates. We all work together, but the NCDP works on behalf of us, but you still got to support those candidates. A little bit can go a long way. So make sure that you are following along, following those campaigns and doing that work. And I need you to do it in 2024. That's the most important election for me. So I appreciate everyone out here. Thank you, Neighbors on Call, for having me. And remember, as Anderson was saying, it's not necessarily the people that are on this Zoom that we need to activate. We know that you're getting out to vote. We need you to reach out to the folks in your family, in your friend groups, and your neighbors that you know, the neighbors that you don't know, and get them excited about 2024. I know that's what Neighbors on Call does, and I will toss it back over to Susan and Becca so they can close us out and give us the final word. Thank y'all all for having me, and thank you for everyone who's out there doing the work.
Thank you so much. Wow, what an evening. What a great thing. I'm going to take a little teeny departure from what I was supposed to say right now, because if you haven't already seen the boot cake, I don't know if it's a boot cake or a cake boot, but I'm just going to have to show you this real quick. Hang on. Get the right little button.
It was delicious, Braxton.
You got to see this. I had already seen it on social media, and I thought, what in the world is that? I couldn't imagine. All right.
That's a pound cake. That's 6 chocolate cake donuts, pressed caramel, lemonade licorice laces, and a whole lot of frosting. So
yeah,
Braxton, I don't like that didn't win. I like there's something wrong here.
There was some ringers in the crowd. That's all I got to say.
There are some more pictures out on Facebook. If you look up Braxton Winston's page, it's just fascinating. But that's it. We've had a long meeting, so I'm not going to spend any more time on that. Anyway, thank you so much to the NCDP leaders for sharing your plans with us tonight. And great to hear all this. And to Braxton Winston for leading this conversation. Great job there. Kudos to all our team that helped us pull this session together. And big shout out to our chapter leaders and our outreach captains who do the very important work of building relationships with all of our volunteers. We love you all. Big thanks to this audience for joining us. Great to have you here. And watch tomorrow. You'll get an email from Neighbors on Call, which will provide you all the links to the various things that have been referred to tonight. So it will give you all you need to donate money or sign up for a canvas or come to our next event. So be watching for that.
Take your Neighbors on Call canvassing shifts, y'all. Take those shifts. 74 people. That's nuts. That's fun.
We did have a good time. And now we've started having donut holes, which is not good for our figures, but hey, it works. Okay.
It's good.
Becky, you have any last
That's
thing you want
nice.
to
I might
say?
bring you a cake.
Oh, good.
We're going to hold you to that. Thank you so
That's
much,
great.
everybody. And we know there's lots of good questions and comments in the chat, and we will share those as appropriate with the NCDP leadership, because we know they'll want to see your questions too.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you.